Next speaker, please welcome Erin Gray. Erin's a senior geologist. She's got a background in microstructural analysis in structural geology.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about a project we began in July this year involving assessing the heavy mineral cargo in soil from the West Arunta. This is a collaborative study with the John DeLater Centre where we're working with Alex Walker and Brent McInnes. So firstly, I'd like to talk briefly about the geology of the West Arunta. The West Arunta region is a remote area close to the WA Northern Territory border, shown as outlined in red here. It is located within the Gap, which has been spoken about today, which is an area of WA that we don't understand very well geologically due to extensive cover and lack of outcrop. So the oldest rocks in the West Arunta are Paleoproterozoic rocks of the Arunta origin. These are divided into the older Aileron province to the north of the Central Australian suture and the younger Warumpi province to the south. These are overlain by the sedimentary rocks of the Amadeus and the Moorabbin basins, then by the rocks of the Canning Basin, and then by Cenozoic cover. So in the West Arunta, whether we are looking for information about the bedrock geology or trying to identify areas that are mineralised, we're exploring undercover. So our understanding of the deeper geology is reliant upon indirect observations, so geophysics, coupled with limited observations from sparse outcrop, as well as bulk soil geochemistry and potentially ultrafine soil analysis. So is there anything else in the cover that can inform us about the bedrock geology and the potential for mineralisation? So in this study, we're going to be looking at heavy minerals, or those that are denser than 2.9 grams per cubic centimetre. Generally, the heavy minerals that survive in eroded cover material are those resistate minerals such as zircon, rutile, monazite, ilmenite and tourmaline, which resist chemical and mechanical weathering and retain characteristics of their source rocks. Heavy mineral studies are well established as successful exploration tools in glacial terrains, with specific indicator minerals able to indicate the presence of diamond, gold and base metal mineralisation. Heavy minerals are underutilised generally in Australia and have been restricted to exploring for commodities such as diamonds, an excellent summary of which is provided by Hutchison 2018 in GSWA report 179. So what are our goals with this project? We want to understand the characteristics of heavy minerals in soil samples from the West Arunta, including the types and relative abundances of different minerals, changes in spatial distribution across the West Arunta, and any differences across different types of regolith. We would also like to see if there is a link between heavy minerals in the soil and the bedrock geology. And another goal is to integrate heavy mineral information with the bulk soil geochemistry or ultrafine soil geochemistry. We are also looking for indicator minerals that may suggest proximity to mineralisation by either the presence of minerals directly related to mineralisation or mineral chemistry of more ubiquitous heavy minerals such as zircon and rutile. And finally, we will be providing samples for the Heavy Mineral Map of Australia, which is a collaboration between the John DeLater Centre and Geoscience Australia, for which coverage over the West Arunta would otherwise be missing. So the samples in our study are a subset of soil samples collected for GSWA regolith geochemical mapping in 2007, and these cover the entire West Arunta and a broad range of geological units. The samples also come from a variety of different landforms. It's going to be important for us to understand where we are in the regolith, particularly whether in situ or transported. So in terms of sample preparation, we've sieved out the 75 to 425 micron size fraction, which hosts most of the heavy resistate minerals. The mineral fraction was then separated out using heavy liquids, mounted in an epoxy disc that was polished and carbon coated. Samples were then analysed by the John DeLater Centre using the TEMA, which is an SEM technique that collects EDS spectra from unknowns in the sample and matches them against a reference database. The output is a map of the mineral phases in the sample that looks like this, as well as quantitative mineralogical data. So I'd just like to show some of our preliminary results from the TEMA analysis. So there appears to be a mineral assemblage that is ubiquitous across the West Arunta and includes iron oxides, almandine garnet, ilmenite, tourmaline, titanium dioxide, zircon, aluminosilicate polymorphs, quartz, and pseudobrookite. There are also a number of minerals occurring in smaller proportions. They are unique to some samples, particularly those in situ soil samples which were collected from close to outcrop. And these minerals include amphibole, pumpelliite, mica, orthopyroxene, titanite, and barite. So I'd like to point out that most of these minerals fit the reference spectra very well, but it is only qualitative, and verification using another method is going to be required. Another important thing to note is that these minerals are those that comprise at least 0.5% of the sample, for the sake of having a diagram that would fit on the slide. However, there are important things to be found in the minerals that occur in very small amounts. So this slide's going to be a little busy, but that's part of what I want to show you, and there are a few main points to focus on. So the slide will show the minerals making up less than 0.5% of the sample. Ordinarily, these might be ignored, but are actually interesting components and comprise anywhere from 1 to 2 grains up to 100, out of around 15 to 16,000 grains in the sample. And these minerals include common rock-forming minerals, metamorphic minerals, rare earth element-bearing minerals, weathering and secondary minerals, and some others that I will come back to shortly. And these are the distributions. So one of the main points of this slide is that these mineral assemblages are complex and contain different generations of minerals. And there's also some economically significant minerals in here, such as cassiterite and garnite. Another thing that I really want to emphasise here is the value of the TEMA automated mapping in detecting these smaller components that would otherwise have been done manually using a binocular microscope. We're expecting to analyse something on the order of 800,000 mineral grains and nearly 20 million data points just from the TEMA alone in this study. So an avenue we intend to investigate to assist with this is machine learning. So what's next for this study? We will be getting results from another 36 samples, 30 of which are soil samples and 6 are thin sections from existing geochronology samples to help establish whether there is a link between nearby soil samples and the bedrock. In addition, the next stage of this project will involve uranium-lead dating and trace element analysis of zircon and detrital rutile, which will provide age and provenance information and hopefully some indication of magmatic fertility and mineralisation potential of the source rocks. We will need to use electron backscatter diffraction, or EBSD, to identify rutile from the other titanium dioxide phases. And there are other potentially useful minerals that we can look at, such as tourmaline and cassiterite, which would be useful to date. So just a quick summary. GSWA have separated heavy minerals from West Arunta soil samples in order to establish the abundance and mineralogy of heavy minerals in the area. We also hope to establish whether these can be linked to the bedrock geology and whether these will be useful for indicating mineralisation potential. The next steps of the study are going to be dependent on what we find using the TEMA mapping. We'll be using EBSD to identify detrital rutile and doing some dating and trace element geochemistry of zircon and rutile. So thank you for listening.